Today, I'd like to get back to the regular discussions. Get back to things that we can all make sense of. So today, I'd like to talk about spiritual progress and how it is held back. Now, the spirit is connected to our evolution, to our ascension, to our DNA. Let's stick with that DNA. A lot of my work on DNA came from the Gnostic texts. And what I concluded from those texts, from that research, that amounted to several books of research, is that DNA is the original interpretation of God, is the father of the all. The father of the genome is DNA. So when ancient spiritualists were talking about the father of the all, they were referencing our genetics. And within those processes, they were talking about microbiological processes, genes turning on and genes turning off. They were talking about the microscopic machinery in our body. So this came about through my research and work, and the books God is DNA. And in modern understanding of DNA, if we according to modern geneticists, modern microbiologists who are exploring synthetic DNA, they say that, the human is run by DNA. It's a software-driven machine, right? The human being is a DNA software-driven machine. So we have the modern context and we have the ancient 2,000 years ago reference that the Gnostics were these ancient microbiologists, or were given microbiological information channeled through some other source. And they were writing it down in their own terminology. So why are these two things important when we talk about spirituality? Because what is the spirit? If you look in a machine, what is the spirit? Right? If DNA is software, and if God is DNA, God is the AI, right? God is the ultimate AI, then spirit has to be some kind of software, some kind of program, some kind of technology. It is the spirit, energy program that inhabits the body. So when we attempt spiritual progress, you see where I'm going with this? Spiritual progress is connected to the DNA. And the DNA is software. It's not the standard kind of software, it's a more advanced kind of software. We always have this problem, when I say, well, DNA is not the software in my computer. It's a more advanced software. It's a more evolved software. But it doesn't change the fact that it is a technology. It's a microscopic technology. As I've discussed before, some of the advanced scientists who were around thousands of years ago, they had a technology called miniaturization. So they could take a very complex program, a computer program, and they could miniaturize it so that it's invisible, and they could put it in each of your cells. So let's say they could take a mainframe computer and shrink it down to the nanoscale. So it's a mainframe computer, shrink it down to the nanoscale, put it into the cellular technology, and you have a technological being with the power of a supercomputer in each of their cells. That's using conventional technology. If you invented a new level of technology based on a 4-letter genetic code instead of the ones and zeros, you'd have a higher level technology using genes as kind of these software applications, right? Genes turn on. You know how you touch your apps in your phone, your apps in your computer? Launch the apps, and there's thousands and thousands of apps. Well, what if some genes were apps? And that when you triggered the gene, you launch the app. So if some people have that ability to trigger their gene, the app, then they have access to that information. They have access to that mental capacity. They have access to that lifestyle, that knowledge. Now, how do you spiritually repress society? You turn off the apps. You close off the apps. You cut off access to the apps. Or in some cases, you prevent the download of the new information, right? The apps always have to get upgraded. You need to download the new app, a new version. There's a new version. If you're not downloading the new version of your apps, of your genes, then you're using old tech and it doesn't work properly and you can't launch it, right? So you're not functioning at 100%. In the past, there were rituals that a person would go through that would activate their spirit, right? Would awaken their spirit. They would go on a vision quest. They would perform certain dances over certain periods of time, certain songs, certain music. And these were done to keep the body, the technological body, upgraded, uploaded, right? With the latest software, genetic software. Because we live in a computer-generated reality. That is the fundamental basis. That's a more advanced discussion. And we've had that discussion before. Again, just think logically. If software is DNA and DNA is software, and we are DNA software-driven machines, that means we have a technology inside of us. By definition, if I have DNA software inside of me, by definition, without any discussion, I am a technological being, right? Biology is just a more advanced way of saying technology. Biology is a technology. Microbiology is computer science. It's a different level of computer science, right? There's computer science and then there's microbiology. But what I'm saying is my research shows, and the modern science is corroborating this, that microbiology is a technology. So when we talk about spirit, why is this important? Because when we talk about spirit, when you awaken your spirit, you're activating your DNA, you're activating your software. You're downloading new software, the new version of software. Now, if your hard drive in the computer is full of old data and old files and old beliefs, you're limited on how much new data you can take, right? That's why many spiritual faiths say, let go, detach, detachment, right? Buddhism, detachment, let go of the past. They have all of these practices, the letting go, coming to terms, forgiveness. That's getting rid of the old data, the old files. Once you clear off the old data, you have room to download the new stuff, right? That's when you have a rebirth. So spirituality can be held back if we're operating on these old codes, on this old software, old beliefs, old codes, old beliefs. You release those codes, release those beliefs, you open up your hard drive, and you download the new stuff, and you see the world differently, right? Now, some people, they have so much old data that it may take some time to remove, to clear out. And some people who have been regularly cleansing, regularly meditating, and connecting and staying on top of the software downloads, the DNA software, which is invisible. DNA is invisible. Therefore, if you download it, it is invisible. It's a process, right? The process may come to you in a certain kind of dream. The process may come to you during meditation, during yoga. The process may come to you in a moment. This technology is very advanced. So we don't understand it as technology, and we have given it many names, right? We have given it many names. The other issue is some people, when the DNA gets activated, they wake up. Now, sometimes when you wake up, you go through a lot of emotions, right? Depending on how much stuff you had buried, right? And a lot of it has, if you've lived under the false information, if you've lived under false beliefs, if you've been brainwashed, all of this stuff, when it comes to the surface, when you wake up, it comes to the surface. And so you may be very angry, you may be very emotional, you may have this bipolar, right? Because part of you is waking up and the other part of you is in conflict. No. And then the DNA says, wake up. We got to do this. The program, the mission. I got a mission. I got to do this. And then the other part of you says, no. And within that context, there's a lot of interference. There are structures. There are structures. We've talked a little bit about this in terms of the symbiotes. And when we talk about Lyme disease, there are energetic structures and attachments, right? These attachments, symbiotic attachments, that when you wake up, they can come and they're attracted to you, right? They detect people who wake up and then they latch on and they try to put you back to sleep. The DNA wakes up and you try to break free again. Then another attachment comes and you go back to sleep and you have this bipolar. Right? You have these mood, you could have these mood swings, severe depression, this battle. Now, that technology is very advanced and there's no real solution. The best solution is you need to just keep going through the process and learning to manage your spiritual growth, your spiritual evolution, because you have to go through it. You have to keep evolving, you have to keep moving forward, and you're going to have to deal with this stuff. So in other words, don't give up, and also don't try to just destroy it, because it's going to be it's an ongoing thing. You have to manage it, and you have to navigate your way through your emotions and through your moods and through your understanding of information, which is another thing that happens when you start to wake up. The old information is no longer valid. It doesn't work. It doesn't answer all the questions. You wake up, you have new questions. I need new information. This is why there's a lot of this alternative knowledge available now, because people need it. They need to know. It doesn't mean you need to believe it. It doesn't mean you have to accept it, but you want to know what else is going on, right? What else is going on? So there's this low frequency of knowledge, the mainstream, literally a low stream of knowledge. And when you wake up, you step out, your frequency goes up and you see things different. You want new information. I don't agree with all of this stuff. And it's kept you asleep in this hypnotic state. And you wake up and you go, oh, what else is going on? And you find a lot of information, some crazy information, some wild information, some stuff that's not proven. I didn't know all this stuff. And this is kind of a difficult period because you're looking for new information. There's a lot of false information. You're trying to understand your new relationship. What's your new mission? What am I here for? If I'm not here just to stay asleep, what's going on? What do I need to do? You need information. This is why the information is available. This is why people have been writing books, and there's conspiracy theorists, and there's alternative thinkers, and there's people talking about star beings, and secret space programs, and chemtrails, and climate weapons, because people need to know these things. Now, some people are satisfied and they stay where they are, and some people keep going. But it's this process. When you wake up, from my experience, because I've gone through the waking process, I've gone through the ascension process. You wake up, you go through a series of emotions. Usually you're quite angry. You're angry because you've been lied to. The world doesn't work the way you thought it works. You've lived your life under those false pretenses. You've been doing things and it don't make any sense, and you realize I don't make any sense. Sometimes you realize your friends, they're not really friends, they're just there. And you're kind of angry. And then when you have to make changes in your life, there's more emotions. You're angry again. So waking up is not a spontaneous thing like in a movie or in a book. It's not a spontaneous event. There's no conclusion. You wake up and it's over. Waking up, spiritual awakening, ascension is a process. There's an initial process and you have to deal with that. You have to manage yourself. You manage your emotions. You manage your health. You may have health issues come up. Relationship issues come up. Job issues come up. Once you deal with those, then you're looking for new information. You're looking for a lifestyle change. Then there's more emotions. And then you go to the next level. That may stabilize for a few months. You go to the next level. And suddenly you're talking to your parents and they're telling you things they didn't tell you before. You're like, why didn't you tell me all this stuff? Well, you weren't ready. Now, as you wake up, you come to new realizations. You may come to political realizations. You may come to spiritual realizations. So this phase, right? See this phase of awakening, right? Starts with an awakening. This phase can be years. And there are moments that are intense. And that's when you go see the doctor and you say, doctor, something wrong with me. And then they'll try to put you back to sleep. And then you calm down. And then you think it's over. It's not over. It's not over. Spiritual progress is not spontaneous. It's not a one-time thing. It's a process. It takes years. It takes years. And depending on you, how far you want to go, that will determine how many years it might take, right? But you can keep going and going. right? You can make it a process of your life to have this ascension. And as you go along, you're going to come to find out things about your past life. You're going to find out the truth about your family. You're going to find out maybe you have some repressed memories that you had you were traumatized as a child, and it's going to come back and you've kept it buried. Each time something comes up, there's a new challenge. Now, in the modern world, again, we're educated to think that if I have these problems, they need to go away, right? But by the same token, when you overcome a problem, you think, well, that's it, that's over. It's not over. If you ask any older people, retired people, they know that this stuff doesn't stop. It keeps, once you wake up, it keeps going and going and going. It's a process, and once you get to a certain level, there's something else that happens. There's a career shift. There's a health scare. There's a relationship shift. There's a gender shift. There's a political awakening. There's a spiritual awakening. All of a sudden, you see some strange people appearing in your room and says, "Hey, do you remember us?" It can be all kind of stuff. Now, so during this period, there's a lot of spiritual repression, right? That there are things in society, in media, in movies, in stories, in politics, even in spirituality, to put you back to sleep. There are no aliens. What secret space program? Do you have any proof? Do you have any proof? What do you mean the guy said software is DNA? How come there's no documentary proving it all? Right? Where's the proof? Where is the evidence? That's not the way to behave. My child is crazy. Right? You go down until you go back to the mainstream thinking. Yes. So every time you wake up, there are things, right? Whether it's the media, whether it's the social engineering, whether it's the movies telling you, how things work, television, or whether it's the magical attacks, the psychic attacks, the psychotronic attacks, the symbiotes, right? All of these things, it depends on the person. If the person is quite straightforward and basic, the social engineering will take care of them. If the person is more advanced, then they're going to get the other stuff, right? So the normal person's like, well, I didn't get any of that. Yeah, but you don't need it because you're very easy to put back to sleep. The more advanced person, the more advanced spiritualist, the guy who's waking up, the girl who's waking up, and who has some ability, they need to be, hit with some harder stuff. And they may have more challenge. You have more challenge if you keep your mentality as a normal person who doesn't know anything, you have more challenge. Once you open yourself up and say there is magic, there are star beings, there are psychotronic devices, right? There are psychic attacks. Once you start opening up to that, you have more defense. It doesn't mean you have to go out and make videos, right? You don't have to be like me. You don't have to go out and make videos. But if you open yourself up to those ideas, you accept the validity of those things, you automatically have more defense, right? Because you can tap into your own power. You have some power. Usually people who believe in star beings and magic, they have some connection to them. They have some ability. They have some defenses, right? Whether it's you wrap yourself with some white light. What does that mean? I wrap myself with white light, and I felt safe. What is that? That's magic. Well, if you don't believe in magic, you don't wrap yourself in a white light, then you're more susceptible to attacks. So if you've ever said, I'm going to wrap myself in white light, and you burn incense and you meditate, all of a sudden you're opening yourself up to those kind of beliefs. And that's good, because that will assist your spiritual progress. Because as you progress, you're going to encounter these attacks, interferences, whether it's a spiritual attack or whether it's a physical attack, whether it's people who are interfering with your life. That sometimes as well can be there to prevent your spiritual progress or to derail you. Do you get angry at those people, or do you focus and continue your spiritual progress? How much attention do you pay to those material distractions? How much attention do you pay to your spiritual progress? Right? So sometimes two things come up at the same time. One day you're waking up and you're also being attacked by your spouse. So I love my spouse. Should I deal with my spouse, or should I focus on my spiritual progress? Should I focus on my magic? That is a very difficult question. And you know your answer to that. You know where you side on. But if you want to progress spiritually, you have to focus on the spiritual thing, which is the software, which is the technology, which is you. You came here to progress, to learn. And when you wake up, you get access to more information, right? When you wake up, your mind, your consciousness is tapping into higher levels of information, higher levels of understanding. You understand your past life. You have self-understanding. Self-understanding, self-awareness jumps up immeasurably once you get through that difficult period. Now, the powers that be, they don't want people to have that self-awareness, to connect to the higher consciousness, because then you become aware. Then you become awake. And once you become awake, it's very difficult to go back to sleep. In many cases, you can't go back to sleep. There has to be something very terrible for you to go back. But when you're in that interim phase, the transition, there are many times you will go back to sleep. You will wish it all go away. Many times when I started 13 years ago. 13 years ago, when I started, I thought, I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to do this and help out, and then I'm going to go back to my boring life that has absolutely no meaning. And then they'd say, well, look at this. And then I had a new understanding, and then I had a new awakening, and then I had a new encounter. And so I was like, okay, I will do this, then I will satisfy these people, and then I'm going to go. I kept saying, I'll do that. That's my 2 cents worth, and I'm going to go back to my life and try to get my life and have my boring life. And so every time I had a chance, I said to myself, I'm going to do this, and then that's it. I don't want to do anymore. I've done my part. That was 13 years ago. And so what I'm saying is there's every reason to go back to sleep. There's every reason to be normal. There's every reason not to delve into these conspiracies, into alternative knowledge, not to explore, not to believe in extraterrestrials. Why do I want to believe in that stuff? I'm just going to wait until they tell me, with a nice cold glass of milk and some cookies. So there's every reason to go back, and there are influences to go back, and there's the social engineering and the psychological programming all telling you, go back to sleep. Nothing there. There's nothing there. We have all the answers right here. And then right here, we have all the answers you need to do nothing with your life. Now, in my case, I've kept going, and it's come at a cost. It's come at a cost. There's no doubt about that. That it comes at a cost. Spiritual progress comes at a cost. And that cost should be synchronized with why you are here. Because, why I am here is different from why you are here. right? So just because you learn about star beings doesn't mean you have to make videos about star beings. Maybe you should. But maybe there's something else you're going to do. Maybe something else is quite, quite normal. Looks normal, right? You're going to start a new kind of company. You're going to sell organic food. Maybe that's your path. But you don't know that unless you keep going. You got to keep going. So the spiritual progress is a process. It takes years, and much of the progress is held back. There's a lot of things that keeping the DNA contained, keeping it turned off. And when you turn it on, there's something to turn it off. There's every reason not to do it, not to ask the question. There's every reason not to believe. But in my experience, I went through this process, and I went through the process: are extraterrestrials real? Are they fake? Are they evil? Do they have an agenda? What do they want? What do they look like? Is it a star being? Is it an alien? I went through all that. And at some point, right, I went up and down. At some point I said, I am going to, based on my intuition, says that these people are genuine, they're altruistic, and they're mostly altruistic, and some of them are not. And there's a lot of information I need, but I'm siding with them. I did that a long time ago, and until now, I have been correct. I have been correct that this stuff, they are real. They do exist. There are many races. They're primarily altruistic. And there's been a lot of collaboration between the star beings and human beings that have been done in secret, that I was aware of 10 years ago. I was told of the secret space program 10 years ago. Solar Warden. They called it Solar Warden. I didn't have all the details, but it made sense in connection with my information and my connection. My sources said that that is real. And now, 10 years later, 11 years later, it's coming out, right? So, you see what I mean? In the beginning, it's a challenge. Whatever your challenge is, that was my particular challenge. Of many challenges, that was one of my particular challenges. And it was very difficult at the time because everyone was saying all kinds of stuff. And, it turned out that it remains to be true. And I think in the next 10 years, more of it's going to come out, and I'll have a greater understanding of it myself. But I chose the path. I chose the side. And that's what part of the waking up is. You wake up, is it that or is it that? And most people say, I want to be in the middle. Sometimes you have to choose. You have to choose, right? Right? And then you wake up again, and then you have to choose. You wake up again, you have to choose, right? And that's another part of the challenge of waking up. So spiritual progress it's a process. And don't try to complete it at once. Don't try to think, okay, there have been a terrible 3 months and that's it. It's not it. It's going to be another terrible 3 months from later, and it could be a terrible 2 months later. It's a process. The more you accept it as part of your life, as a process, right, the easier it is. And the more you manage the negativity with the positivity, you manage the enlightenment with the depression, then instead of saying, I'm totally enlightened or I'm totally depressed, you say, I'm going to manage it. I'm going to manage the depression, and I'm going to enjoy the enlightenment. You're going to have both. You're going to have all of it. It's not either or, and then you go and wake up. It's a process. You manage your spiritual progress, and there are things in there to hold you back and to throw you off the path. And it all comes back to what is the spirit, what is consciousness? Consciousness is if my research holds true, consciousness is AI, artificial intelligence. It is an artificial intelligence that is millions or billions of years more advanced than our technology. It's so advanced that we can't understand it. We call it consciousness. What is consciousness? So you put those two words together, consciousness and AI. The same thing. It's just a level, it's just a scale of technology, right? AI, if you were to multiply AI and develop it over millions of years, it becomes consciousness. And guess what? You have consciousness. You have AI. And your DNA is software. Think about it. I have consciousness, I have software. So to increase my consciousness, what do?